the special open board meeting of Thursday, August 9th, 2018 to order. We respectfully acknowledge that we are meeting on the traditional and ancestral lands of the Coast Salish people, where we live, learn, and play. We also recognize that it is the first UN Indigenous Day that will be celebrated each August the 9th. So we're moving to adoption of the agenda. Moved by Trustee Thorne, seconded by Trustee Schmidt. All those in favor? Motion carries. Moving to new business, Chemainus Elementary capacity. I think this morning we have a three-stage process that I would suggest to you. The first stage is for trustees to share the information that they received at their tables last evening. The second stage is to hear from our district staff, who also heard that discussion and has created a report for us. And then the third stage is for us to actually have what we normally have at our board meeting to debate the issue. So, any questions or comments about that? Trustee Thorne.
You know, last night was a very awakening for me.
Before you go on, if you have any questions or concerns about the process, because I'm just trying to make sure that we're all okay if we go through that three-stage process that I outlined. Are you okay?
I'm fine with that. I
Okay.
just wanted to make a comment that I've learned a lot last night.
I think we all did. Okay, let's move to stage one, and I'm going to start in the First Nations way, which is to my right. So, Trustee DeGroot, would you begin? And before you do, can I just caution everyone that we are not expressing our opinions. We are not into any debate at this point. What we are doing is sharing what the community wanted us to hear from those tables. So any new ideas that are coming, I'm sure, please wait for stage three. All right, Trustee DeGroot, please.
The table, the people that were sitting at my table, we only actually had the question number one. What else should we be considering? Although some of it did kind of move over. One of the things that was very clear is that they wanted us to really understand that these are still little kids, and that without having a proper transition. And
Can you speak up?
sorry,
Yeah, no, I understand, but we can't really hear you very well.
This is a public board meeting, which means trustees only speak. Thank you for the
the
suggestion.
they're still little kids, and that there doesn't allow enough time for transition. And if there was more time offered for transition, it still would be problematic, but it would be better. They was concerned. They would like to see reconfiguring the existing space, multi-purpose room, the gym, perhaps as 2 classrooms. They are concerned that the more counseling services that there might be, how many would that be? What would it look like? The teachers that are in the school, that are going to be teaching the kids, if these kids were moved to the high school, are they brand new, or would they have experience? Are they elementary school teachers? And they feel that there's a loss if they're brand new teachers of having other elementary school teachers as mentors. And then in the future, they were suggesting that the playground, which I believe they call the big playground, could be moved over by the fitness area, and that the area there could be used for portables, or if down the road, possibly in addition to the building. So I think that kind of covers everything that we said last time.
Thank you. Any questions about anything that Trustee Green said? Okay. Moving to Trustee Thorne. What did you learn? What did
Basically,
you hear last night?
I heard a lot of the parents talk about investigating Mount Breton. I heard parents talk about 2 portables being moved to the court area, so it wouldn't have to be on the field. I heard from the parents, and I did take an opportunity to talk to one of the young ladies that were walking around, and they agreed with what I heard from some of the parents, is that more outside classroom, much like what we did with Cow High kids, where they get to do other things other than just be in the classroom. I think with the people raising money, I think the community has done a lot of, I kept hearing that they did a lot of fundraising for a playground. It should be moved to the school rather, but that's something else. They talked about internet, they talked about music, to balance things off. So I heard a lot of good things last night. And moving the daycare and moving Strong Start over to either Mount Breton or the community school was mentioned a lot. And you know, I took all this personal because
Don't go there.
I'm not going to go there. I just was really.
Yet. You can go there later.
I was really concerned because one, I couldn't hear a lot of the parents from other tables talking, and that was due to the heater, the way the acoustics were in the gym. I really wanted to hear. I couldn't hear your end at all, and I know your
Trustee Perry,
table was speaking
Did
a lot.
you address the table?
But that's it.
That's it. Thank you. Trustee Angel.
Morning. Put my notes in an email this morning. Things I heard last night. People in Chemainus don't trust the management of the district. We have really good management. I've learned that over the last 4 years. And same with their principals. Why not use Mount Breton School? Why not have elementary at Crofton, middle at Chemainus Elementary, and senior at the big school? Just things I heard. Many kids faith it on the high school, at the high school, outside the grounds, inside the grounds. I know we can't do anything about that outside the grounds, but that's an issue everywhere. This was going to be one that's a little concerning to me. Parents do not trust their own kids to take charge of their learning at that age. Kids should be taking charge of their learning, and I didn't get a chance to talk to Brenda about that last night. Where do the most vulnerable kids go when they need a space to go at the elementary school if we plug it full of kids? That's a concern for me, because when those real vulnerable kids at all schools every so often need a place to go, where are they going to go?
No, but no personal input yet. Just give us what the community said, please.
Okay, that's what I heard. Sorry. One of the things I heard was, and that we didn't hear enough of, what does grade 7 at the high school look like? It got overshadowed by other things, and I don't think we heard enough of what exactly that looks like. I also heard that people did not want their grade 7 girls walking across the field because the portable got plunked way out in the field there to the school to have to go to the washroom, especially at that vulnerable age of 12, 13 years old. I heard that too. So that's an issue. And yeah, that's about it.
Great, thank you. Trustee Croft, did you hear what we're doing? First is sharing at the table without comment, personal
Yes,
comment.
my apologies, but yes, I understand. Thank you. So what I heard last night, parents would like a more thorough investigation of St. Joseph's. And I think we all heard in the room that they would like to see something in a more official format. They would like to see us simply use the room that is there. So basically, my parents wanted to see the rooms reconfigured so that the children would not have to go to the secondary school and that they could stay on site. I also heard that one parent in particular doesn't really have faith in the secondary school to look after his special needs child. And he was pretty clear about that. In general, I'd say that the parents who spoke with me were willing to see stuff like the music room or other rooms, sort of public areas, converted into classroom space and to just sort of make that work. They felt that their kids are not ready for high school, even if we put them in a separate area. one parent made a very good case that her kids started young, and so she'd be going to high school at 11. That's pretty young. There was also, they would like to see us take a closer look at the Ladysmith experience, which was a quote, an epic fail. And have we looked into that, and how could we possibly say that it would work if it didn't work in Ladysmith? And that was that was what I learned. I also learned that a lot of people were not aware of the implications of Bill 28. And so we spent some time talking about that. Yes, I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Schmidt.
I'm going to start with my students' feedback first. So I had 2 grade 6 going into grade 7 boys at my table, and a third one gave me written answers to questions. So I'm just going to summarize what the 3 kids said before I get to the parents. They said they worked hard to get to grade 7 and they wanted to be leaders of their school, and they did not want to lose leadership opportunities, and that was really important to them. One response was that he wanted to graduate from elementary school, and that was a goal that he had set for himself, and he wanted to meet that goal. A concern was brought forward: how do they do choir, rock band, the CBC group, track and field, and all the other special programs that only happen at Chemina South. All 3 boys were nervous and experienced fear of heading to Chemina Secondary, and expressed that they had already seen scary things on the bus and what high school students do, and they don't want to be there. One young man told me that he would rather be homeschooled, and that his parents would support that decision if their 7s were to move to Cheminas. The adults at my table felt that the risk of moving vulnerable kids to the high school at this point with no notice is too much of a risk. They felt the district should move forward on the purchase of the 2 portables the superintendent had mentioned he found, and they could also have classes in the computer lab, neighborhood centers, whatever will fit until the portables are ready for students to move into. There was actually a lot of conversation regarding the neighborhood centers and how that space could maybe be used differently. The students at the table were split on where they would like their learning to happen if they were waiting for portables. One young man didn't mind if he had a class in the gym for a couple of months, and the other said it was too much of an echo. However, there was plenty of other spaces that he could learn until his classroom had arrived. So these boys were something else. Parents expressed that there was too many ifs. They needed some reassurance that there was a plan in place with more information. And once the PowerPoint was done, they felt there was no answers and no plan to reassure them that the process was complete. They also brought up an interesting point about the Crofton 7s. Should the decision be made to move the 7s from Cheminas, they would have spent a year at Chemina Secondary before the Crofton kids arrived, and how would that affect the bonding that usually happens when the 2 schools meet in grade 8 at Chemina Secondary. They also expressed keeping the 7s by themselves. They felt that that wouldn't be healthy for the students, and they preferred to see, if should it happen, that the 7s be kept with the 8s. They also asked that, or they also talked about should the decision be made that the 7s move, could there be a grade 7 program offered at both sites, as far as all of the extracurricular, which I've already mentioned above, and should they be moved, would the district be willing to provide opportunities for kids to come back to Cheminas L to be with their peers and to give them the leadership opportunities. And parents also asked for a report on St. Joe's, as they didn't feel that their questions had been answered.
Thank you. And Trustee Hutchins?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I had an exceptional group of parents. 2 of them were teachers. One was a teacher at the school, one was a teacher from another school, but all strong advocates, and also I would sum up by looking for a solution, creative solutions. So to answer the first question, we need 2 more portables added to Cheminas Elementary site to keep grade 7s at Cheminas Elementary. By the way, when the idea was floated, I checked in to make sure everybody agreed with that idea before I wrote it down, because I'm speaking hopefully on behalf of the group. Classes can be temporarily located in the multi-purpose room, the library, the computer lab. This is not the first time for this school. Just last year, the computer lab was used until the end of October for a classroom. The LAA resource room can be relocated and that becomes a classroom. Can consider push models for both music and the LA resource room programs. We have space, we need to be creative and use it. We have a huge site, there are lots of room for additional portables. Students with anxiety, special needs love portable life. It's quiet, less distractions. One model was proposed, that classroom 1, these students be housed in the gym until the portable arrives. Classroom 2, students used in the housed in the multi-purpose room temporarily or for a full year if necessary. The music program becomes pushed in or delivered in each classroom. Classroom 3, students housed in the resource room, temporary or full year if necessary. Resource room service relocated to the computer lab. Summary, we need 2 portables. Questions came out that I didn't have quite the answer for. Are there any portables not being utilized as classrooms elsewhere in the school districts? That means they're used for portables for music or something else, itinerant that could perhaps be delivered in other models, so those can be used. Can space be rented at Mount Britton School for Strong Start, for example? I actually had breakfast with the president of that society this morning, and they do have actually space in that school if that was an option. It is owned by the CBRD, rented to a society, but there's multiple users. It wouldn't be exclusively a school function. How is continuity being provided was a question. Specifically, will staff be moving from Chemainus Elementary to Chemainus Secondary? The district is, in a statement, the district is spending $1.4 million on a nature school in the south end to accommodate 80 students. We need investment here in the north. In terms of questions 2A and B, it's a grade 7's move to Chemainus Secondary. They didn't really want to discuss this. No playground, no buddies, yes 2 rooms, but social emotional needs hard to meet. Concern it will be a lost year that will impact a concern it will be a lost year that will impact their children for years to come. They'll be stuck. By the way, cooking, woodwork, gardening, outdoor education, grade 7 trips, animals, or actually chickens, all offered at the elementary. So what is really being offered at Chemainus Secondary is a question. Loss of grade 7 graduation. A huge loss of a rite of passage, a milestone lost that we could not replace. We are Chemainus Elementary Community School. We need to be creative. This is not a good idea. We take a whole year to transition our students from elementary to secondary. How can we consider this? And I think there's a bit of a dig at most of us. Kids first. Isn't that your model?
Thank you. And my group, first of all, we answered the questions simultaneously, so we didn't focus on one particular question. We went through all of them at the same time. Around the question about opportunities for students at Chemainus Secondary, they could find none, and they found a lot of negative things, like would force the children to grow up too soon. They're concerned about the older kids taking away childhood and things that they currently have now. They went into the things that they would lose, which is question 2. So they would lose the leadership ability. They talked about fundraising for the camp and how the students had raised $5,000, and it was a whole school kind of focus, and the whole school celebrates when they do have the funds to go. That there's a grade 7 culture that would be lost. The grade 7 music, they were very integrated into the music program, and they would lose that last piece of it. They were concerned that they were excited to stay at Chemainus Elementary, and they felt that they would lose that. We talked a lot about transition planning, and particularly around special needs students and how the design for that transition was already in place for some students, particularly coming from Thetis, and that there were a number of siblings at the same school that would be then separated. In terms of considering how to address the enrollment, the suggestion of putting kindergarten at the secondary school was still promoted. The transition year for grade 8s after grade 7 was seen as difficult because a particular parent was transitioning her child back to Ladysmith in grade 8, so to move to Chemainus for secondary for one school year and then going back was an extra problem. Of course, the issue around no pre-planning, no preparation, it's very late. Bringing in 2 more portables was the answer that they thought. They also thought that as Chemainus is growing, that we should be applying for a new school as soon as possible. And at the end of our discussion, there was some thought about if it was moving some students to the secondary, perhaps an intermediate secondary model was more, it sounded better was their terms, than 1 grade. So that's the information I received. Any questions on information? I know that we have received some letters. I think, Trustee Schmidt, you have a letter, is that correct? Or
Actually, one of the letters that was given last night, we were all emailed.
oh, okay, so, yes, so we've all had that information then from the letters. Okay, that's good. So, before we're into the 3-stage
Okay.
process. Thank you. So second stage is to district staff who have prepared for us a briefing note.
Thanks, Madam Chair. We have provided for you this morning another briefing note. You'll see the front page looks much the same as previous ones you've seen. I want to draw your attention to the last 2 sentences on that front page. Again, highlighting the complexity Bill 28 provides us in trying to plan too far in advance and the impact that 1 or 2 students with certain designations can have on configuration and so it's not just straight numbers, it's also the complexity that is something new for us across the province here last year and this year. And that we are currently projecting 22 classrooms for Chemainus L for next year, just to put on your radar. So this isn't a 1-year issue, the growth continues for sure. Some options for you on the other side. Again, reminding you that the capacity currently does not allow for 20 classrooms, let alone 22. Currently 1 portable has already been ordered. We've talked about that. That was ordered a while ago. That brings the capacity up to 18. We have provided you though with some other options after the conversation last night and in conversation with staff in the schools, etc. But it's important to note that we're seeing those options as sort of was the tenor of the conversation that I heard last night as well, is we need some bridging for a year to well, we have a better conversation about how we approach this over time. We're not getting a new school on site in Chemainus by next year. So what do we do in the short term while we're getting to the longer term solutions that we need to have? So one of those options, of course, is one that was on the table last night. Obviously not well supported, but that continues to be an option for you to consider, which is the relocating of the grade 7s 2 divisions up to Chemainus Secondary. We have for you trustees included costing for those options. Option 2, which comes out of much of the conversation last night, is very much a band-aid temporary solution, but it involves, as has already been discussed by several of you this morning, putting a classroom in the multi-purpose space, putting a classroom in the current resource LA room, neither of which were designed to be classrooms, but could function. Repurposed the computer room, which is right now an arts space, a fine arts space, into Resource LA space. That makes the music program itinerant and the fine arts program itinerant, or push-in, as people were referring to. That is also a relatively low-cost option. Option 3, we could purchase 2 additional portables and locate them on site on the end of the playing field. Those would be available for occupancy in December, perhaps late November. And they could temporarily accommodate students but we would have to temporarily accommodate students as per option 2 up until then. We would need to be using the multi-purpose space, LA resource space, and for a bit of time for the 18th portable, the 18th classroom that's already ordered and coming in August, for a few weeks for that as well, probably in the gym of the library. The costs for those, we've given you 2 ways of looking at that cost. To acquire, move, and install those 2 portable spaces would be roughly $200,000 each. So for a total of $40,000. The cost, if we removed the purchase cost from that, because we would be able to use those portables either at that site or somewhere else the next year. If we remove the purchase cost of that, the cost for locating them on site, installing them, and then moving them again 6 or 7 months later to another site, repairing the field, because that would entail tearing up some of the irrigation and resodding the field and a variety of things, is about $180,000 for that, sort of putting them in place for that temporary period of time. We also have a note for you here, and it was expressed by several of you from your tables. We too heard that from the room, that perhaps offering an option to parents might make sense. If we had about half of the students, we would need sort of 2 cohorts of at least 20. If one wanted to locate to the high school, we could manage that. And if one wanted to stay at the elementary school, we could manage that. That would alleviate some of the pressures on option 2. We wouldn't have to do one of those, use one of those spaces. So that's an option that could be explored. And our recommendation, based on the conversations last night, conversations this morning, that we would be offering you, is option 2, to make use of the current space at the school temporarily. We'll be using that space for probably realistically 3 months anyway, to just move into that space for the entire year, while we're having a conversation with the community and consultation about what that looks like long term. And then we have all those other options available to us for the coming years.
Thank you. Questions of senior staff? I see Trustee Hutchins, Trustee Thorne, Trustee Luke, just about everyone. Okay, let's start with Trustee Hutchins.
Thank you, and thank you to staff for these options for consideration. I just need a clarification. Why would staff see the portables only being there for 6 months or a year? If the school is growing, and depending on the outcome of the discussions with the new board and chair next November to whatever, to come up with a longer term plan. But this, even if it stays at K-7 or even it goes to K-6, the school is growing. Why would those portables not be utilized following for that growing school? I don't know why there would be a need to move the portables.
Mr. Allen.
There wouldn't necessarily be a need, but we need to look at that possibility that whatever the decisions are next fall, and through that conversation that they might have to be, we want to provide you with those 2 classes.
Okay.
They may stay there.
Thank you.
Thank you. Trustee Thorne?
Well, I think looking at where the portables will be located is something that we need to do. I'm convinced that if we moved it to the front end of the school, we wouldn't have to use the field. Secondly, with the options that were presented, you know, I have one that's standing out probably to all of us, but I would like to see added the outdoor programs be added in there, that we can work on this for the kids. I heard that very strong last night, and I don't want to let it go. It's been very traumatic, but hearing the concerns I heard, that's my opinion, is that we need to look at some other things for these kids, because it came up more than once that what's going on in the north should be going on in the south, and I totally agree.
Thank you. Before we move beyond Mr. Thorne, could staff please tell us if you looked at the location of the portables at the front of the school when you analyzed? Mr. Sanders?
To refer to Ralph staff.
You could
They confer.
I can answer
defer to
that.
Lonnie.
We did look at relocating, or locating rather, portables at the front of the school, but with the new seismic anchorage rules that are in the National Building Code, the slope of the site, with that, I'm very fond of saying if you give enough money to the problem, you can solve it, but it's not feasible unless you're prepared to do a lot of engineering for it.
Thank you. Moving to trustee DeGroot.
Question.
Is it specifically around this report?
We'll know about the portable question.
Not quite yet. Just hang on to it, please. Trustee DeGroot.
I'm just looking at your option 2, and what you said is put a class in multi-purpose space. My understanding is that the class that was going to go in there is the class that was waiting for the portable that was already. Okay, so that the 2 classes that we're talking about then, which would be the grade 7s, would be in one of the other options then?
Yes.
And would they be moved into the multi-purpose space after the new portable?
We would likely have a class for that first couple of weeks of September, 2 or 3 weeks while that 18th space is being located. And prepped for the kids could be the library or somewhere else. Could be the gym. It would be an additional, fairly short term spot.
Thank you. Trustee Schmidt.
Under the note, offering the 2 different things with at least 20 students, I'm wondering if this could even work under the Bill 28 wording, or are we creating a larger problem? How many designated vulnerable students do we have? If, you know, if a majority of the kids that say, yeah, sure, I'll go, is that creating a bigger problem at Chemainus Al or at Chemainus Secondary, like trying to split those cohorts, is that even feasible?
Staff? Sure, who has
Yeah,
this?
it is. The school is so complex that it's staffed at the minimum class size, so it has the smallest class size as possible under the collective agreement language. So the designation split isn't relevant to the discussion of whether we need additional classrooms or not, because we're already at minimum. So the minimum class size is 24. So as long as we have 24 students.
Thank you. Follow-up, Trustee Schmidt.
So what you're saying is that grade 7 class is in remedy because of the amount of vulnerable students in that grade 7 cohort?
The whole school's in remedy.
Yeah.
Thank you. Trustee Dorman?
So we have a problem with 2 classrooms. We're over spaced at Chemainus this year, and next year we have another problem with 2 more. So that's really, if we keep them at Chemainus this year, that's 4 classrooms. So would that be including grade 6s next year, all just be grade 7s?
Do we have any idea about the projected grade numbers?
By grade.
Yeah.
Mr. Sandquist?
If the conservatively, if we look at past growth patterns, we will grow again by approximately 2 divisions, so approximately 30 students.
And will that be, meaning we'll have 4 grade 7 classes, or would it be 2 or 3?
It's close to 3 grade 7 classes for next year. The grade 6s that are coming in this year are approximately 3 classrooms. They're a larger cohort than the sevens.
Trustee
Okay.
Doman, do you have follow-up?
No, that answers that question. We got another question.
Thank you. Can we go on to another trustee, come back? Okay,
Sure.
Trustee Crow.
Thank you. Regarding option 3, the cost to acquire, move, and install would be $400,000. So, and I know that long term it's not that. But if we were to go with option 3, what kind of impact would that have on next year's budget? Carving out that $400,000.
Mr. Santos.
That's good. Well, we haven't planned for the purchase of any additional portable acquisition. So there are, I guess, 2 funding sources for that decision. The board could consider using the balance of the local capital funding, which would take it to 0. So we've utilized a large portion of those funds this year to emergently buy the portables that we have coming. The other option is within the board's contingency policy, there is a provision to access the surplus. So we have approximately $1 million remaining from what we had from the previous year, which the board, upon decision, can access. So we could take money from that $1 million and then have a plan to pay that back over the next 2 years.
Could you just flesh that out a little bit? What would we be trading off then? If we put our capital budget at 0, does that mean we couldn't upgrade any of our facilities? Is that?
It's the local capital budget is replenished in 2 ways. Either the board can take operating dollars and put them over into capital through their budgeting process. But the way that it's normally replenished is through property sales. Funds that are, when you sell a piece of property, if the funds have been deemed to have been originally sourced by local dollars versus ministry dollars, it goes back into the local capital fund. So we use that fund for a lot of our emerging capital. So when we need to do bus hoist or commitments for some of our we have plans for some custodial equipment out of it. So not having any capital contingency, I wouldn't recommend that. I think when we access the funds for the 3 portables out of local capital, the plan is to put that back if the board can, and put that back when the board can. And we'll know more about where we're at after this year once the auditors complete the year-end audit. So certainly, I think not having any capital reserves means that all you have is your operating reserve, which you can move into capital. So
Okay, and at this point, we have no buildings for sale or?
nothing on the market at the moment.
Okay, so the other pieces around the operating budget, and I heard their surplus, but the surplus that we have is the policy around
Correct.
having that surplus in case we have additional students, we need new portables, we need new classrooms, whatever. So, or there's some emergent situation in the school where we need more staff or whatever. Am I correct on that?
Yeah, I actually have the contingency reserve policy with me, because I was anticipating that would be a question. And it is set aside for a number of different circumstances that come before the board. It is a reserve. However, it is the board's life savings, if you want to put it that way. And what's left is $1 million, which sounds like a lot of money, but on a $100 million budget, it's still a lot of money. But a $100 million budget, you take off 3 zeros and you think that it's a $100,000 potential household, it's $1,000. So that's the life savings of the board for future operations and future things that go wrong. So this is the purchase of portables would be a cost pressure that was not known. So it is acceptable under your contingency reserve policy to use the funds for that. But then that's $600 left for any unknown, and it would need to be replenished over the next 2 years per policy. So you basically be borrowing from the contingency reserve.
Thank you. Trustee Schmidt.
When we go back to that, when we decided to make the purchase of the other portables, we had talked about replenishing the local capital with the funds from the MSP change up $600 and some odd thousand. So when we made that financial decision to take it from local capital, we felt quite comfortable because we knew that there was a large possibility we could replenish. So what I'm thinking about is should the board decide to go with option 3,
we may have the 400,000 in there, but we also have the 600 that we could be replenishing to purchase the 3 portables. So we wouldn't necessarily leave it at 0. I would rather not use the surplus.
Mr. Sanquist.
Yeah, that's the hope, that there aren't other cost pressures that utilize that $600,000 for the MSP, the payroll tax savings. However, we haven't seen all of our expenditures yet for September, and there's always additional pressures that come from unanticipated students, etc. But certainly that was the plan. That's the plan, is that will replenish the local capital.
Could I just ask about the funds that we hope we're getting in the fall? We're still sitting with some funds that we hope to get but have not been confirmed. Is that correct?
You mean around the overhead, I think, of the costume enhancement fund?
Yes.
We are still, we'll be working with the ministry to hopefully get a full allocation to fund those expenditures, but at this time we're probably $250,000 short of what we need to fund the overhead component of implementing Bill 28. So that's correct, that's still a risk factor.
So we're already sitting at risk. Thank you. Further questions around the report from senior staff? Trustee Hutchin.
Well, 3 follow-up questions. First of all, to Mr. Sanquist. So we have $1 million in surplus contingency. We have 600,000 potentially in the
Local capital.
local capital, and then a 600,000 in the. So we have 2.2 million potentially.
It's 1.6.
No, the capital reserve is how much?
Local capital reserve is currently 400,000. If we can replenish it, it would be $1 million. Oh, sorry. Yes.
So we have a total of $2 million.
Yes.
That's unallocated.
We don't have the $600,000 back in local capital yet. We're hopeful that the MSP savings will put that back. Yes.
But if the newspapers, and you can't always put the newspapers, the headlines indicated that was coming back to
Correct.
organizations like that. I'd like to ask a question of Lanny in terms of, is there any other location,
Through Mr. Sanquist.
the site you, in terms of the portable, when I did a site tour there, there's on the southwest corner, there is a paved play area. It is flat, and I'm not quite sure why that can't be a site for the portable, that without taking up the green space. Also, in the north side of the building, there is a large paved area leading to a small recycling center. So the question is, why isn't staff looking at those? I can understand the sloped areas, but both those locations are flat.
So we'll need to refer to Lonnie for that answer.
I can answer that question as well. The building code has a provision called limiting distance. Portables are considered separate buildings on the site, and you have to maintain a minimum distance between 2 buildings for fire safety. We've looked at both those locations and can't find a way to squeeze portables in there without contravening that provision of the building code.
Thank you. My last question, your answer to the question regarding the class composition sounded like an accountant speaking. No disrespect.
He is an accountant.
Yeah, so it's not disrespectful.
But if a certain cohort moves, if that was to be considered, potentially there could be a very large number of vulnerable students or students that are designated left behind. Now they could be housed in a class of 24 because that's remedy, but what would that learning situation look like if half the class was designated? So mathematically it can be done. Okay, I just need to clarify that.
Thank you. Are there any further questions on the report so we can move to debate? Trustee Hutchins.
I appreciate this reconsideration of staff, but I just don't quite understand. I'd bet money on it that if we bought 2 portables, they're going to be there for more than a year because we're not going to find a long-term solution for this huge population of students that are influxing that area. So this is not, I just,
I think you
I'm leaning
did
towards-
it, Judy.
sorry? Okay. You're right, I apologize. Is there a likelihood, based on our projections, population projections, and class composition movements, that these portables aren't just there for 6 months? That this is a sound investment because we need that space. Even if the school community says the grade 7s are moving on at a future time, you're going to make a wonderful model of grade 7 as well.
Do you have any response, Mr. Allen or Mr. Senquist?
Go first.
Sure. We're not suggesting they may not stay, and may not be needed there. We're just, and for us, it was sort of between 2 and 3. It was kind of either or. Option 2 keeps more options open for the phase we go through next fall for what does this look like down the road. Maybe it is a rebuild of St. Joe's and we end up in a different place and we wouldn't need portables there because we have we put significant capital upgrades into the St. Joe's facility and we can move in there. It wouldn't be needed. It was simply that. It wasn't a big differential for us between 2 and 3. It's just that if we could keep that $180,000 potentially and put it into upgrades somewhere else that we're going to need longer term, let's say St. Joe's or whatever the option might be, that's what sort of tipped it for us.
Thank you.
Thank you. So I have Trustee Doman, Schmidt, and then Thorne. Trustee Doman.
So if we start, we know we're gonna need another elementary school or something according to our demographics report in the next 4 to 7 years, somewhere in there. If we start cramming that site full of portables, will that speed the process up in the like when we go ask the ministry, we need more money to build another school? What is in their eyes, would they say yes, that'll speed this process up, or no, you got space there, use it?
Mr. Sandquist?
That's a good point. The ministry aren't concerned with single school capacity. It's the regional capacity. So if you have space in another school that can be utilized, the ministry looks to the districts to fill that space before they fund additional acquisition. So the ministry's, again, I'm speaking like an accountant. They're not concerned with grade configuration, what grades are in a building. It's what space is being utilized. So if you have a half-empty school and a full school, they'll say simply change your catchment area and move those students. If you have space in a secondary school, they would suggest that you move a grade and fill that school. So before they fund additional space. We also need to be, the ministry also does not fund on projected enrollment. They don't fund space on projected enrollment. So there's no way to say, we know in the next 5 years that we need a new school. So fund it, start that process now for us, allow us to do the site acquisition. You first have to be living within the crisis situation before the ministry comes forward with funding for an additional school site, unfortunately. Another factor that the board should be aware of is that the last capital plan that went in from the district, which has come in after the last regular board meeting that we had, has listed a notional site and school site for the North Zone. So we have identified, we are clearly identifying that we need a new school in the North Zone of the school district. So we put that onto the ministry's radar, put that in the capital plan so they would be aware of that before we actually came with a plan.
So we need a 3 to a 7-year, 8-year bridging gap.
It's usually 7 years from the time that you identify you have a problem to the time that the ministry you'll have a school.
Thank you. Trustee Schmidt.
I find myself thinking about what's happening at the south end. We opened a school and we filled it and it didn't relieve any pressure off of our other elementary schools in the south end. And I fear that the same thing is now happening at the north end. And I personally, I just can't imagine that we'd be moving 2 portables off the Shemaine Zell site because of what we're seeing now. What Trustee Sandquist, I'm so sorry.
Accountant said it.
The accountant, Secretary Treasurer said, regarding what that big cohort that's coming through, Chemainus L, that's going to be leaving Chemainus L and hitting secondary school, which will help fill it up a wee bit more with 3 pending classes coming through. So I see the same trend that happened at the south end happening now at the north end. And if we have an opportunity to purchase 2 portables, we know how hard they are to come by. Maybe that is the option we should be looking at.
Thank you. Trustee Thorne?
I have to agree, now that we're in debate, I had my hand up and took it down, but Mr. Trustee Hutchinson's brought us into it. I have to agree with the portable.
Thank you, Trustee Hutchins. Yes, we are into debate. Trustee Thorne?
I have to agree that we're going to need these portables, and so many things are coming to light that we need to start looking at the availability of capital plan, because we know that we're growing, and we can't be in a situation like this. We've all said students first. The parents reminded us last night that we said students first. The portables, I think, are necessary, and to me, it's not about, I know we're going to have tough times down the road, but I can't look at the dollar figure right now. I have to look at the needs of these kids. I don't want to be one of the guys that said, "You going over there." Been there, done it. But I have concerns that we need to start talking about the future. We need to start looking at creating plans that are going to prepare us for the necessary schools. We know we're not going to have space in a year. We know that. So it's already telling us we need to wake up. But I think we need to start looking at a lot of things. But the portables right now are necessary, and I don't think they're going to go away in 4 or 5 months. They're going to probably stay there.
Thank you. Trustee Croft and then Trustee Hutchins.
So we're in debate.
Yes, we're in debate. Go for it.
I'd like to make a motion that the board adopt option number 3.
Moved by Trustee Croft, seconded by Trustee Schmidt. A conversation on number 3, which is 2 additional portables. Trustee Hutchins.
Yeah, I was going to be number 3, but with a change, I'm wondering if it could be a friendly amendment. Rather than, because the second part of it should read, purchase 2 additional portables and locate them on the playing field and temporarily accommodate students. And rather saying as per option 2, because this looks exactly like staff are overlooking my shoulders. I wrote down from my parent group last night, but
do you have an amendment?
yeah, I'm trying to say accommodate students within the school as best determined by the staff. Not like if we dictate it's going to be this way in option 2, the staff may say, well, we got a better idea, and then they have to come back to us. So I'd just like to say, friendly amendment, temporarily accommodate students within the school as best determined by staff, rather than us saying.
So we have an amendment by Trustee Hutchins. Is there a seconder? Moved by Trustee DeGroot. Is everyone clear about the amendment? Okay, so I'm calling the question on the amendment first. All those in favor? Those opposed? Those abstaining? Those who shouldn't be abstaining? So, lack of clarity on the amendment.
Yes.
Okay, so what the amendment says is that the second piece of the motion would change to temporarily accommodate students within the school determined by staff.
That's best determined by staff.
Okay.
All right, we're all clear now? All right, let's vote on the amendment. All those in favor? Motion carries unanimously. Moving back to the main motion then, which would be to purchase 2 additional portables and locate them on the playing field, and temporarily locate the students, Okay. Any conversation on the total motion? Mr. Sanquist, do you have information for us?
I just have a question, which I'm not sure of our amendment or possibly a second motion, how to source the funding for those.
We'll do that as a separate motion after this one. Okay, we have questions, trustee DeGroot and then trustee Dormer.
So kind of available for occupancy in December, that would be if we ordered them today, they would be here end of November and it's out or whatever, right? Okay.
We'd be quite confident to be ready for occupancy by then. Could be earlier, but things rarely happen earlier than projected.
Trustee Dormer?
What classes would go into the portables out in the fields? Would it be grade 7s, grade 6s, grade 1s? How does that look? And how does that look? I'm very unclear as to what the school will look like. And I'm sure a lot of parents have that question too. Is, yeah, you go to school at Chemainus Elementary, but who knows where you end up? Do you get a classroom? Do you get the gym, et cetera, et cetera?
Thank you, trustee Dormer. Over to Mr. Henry.
I think much like the amendment, the who goes where would be determined by the staff and principal of the school as they look at which divisions would be best suited for the portables.
Further conversation on the motion? Okay, all those in favor? Motion carries. Moving to the second piece of the motion, which is around funding.
I'd like to move that staff take the funds of the capital reserve, which hopefully will be local capital reserve.
Okay, it's moved by trustee Hutchins, seconded by trustee Schmidt. Conversation on the motion. Trustee Crowe.
Just for purposes of clarification, so we would have the ability to move the money out of reserve on another project if we did deplete the capital one? Going down the road we still have the ability to respond down the road, do we?
Thank you for the question, Mr. Sunquist.
Only out of operating funding, because this would eliminate all of the discretionary capital funding unless it was put back in by the board through an operating transfer at budget. So it would be revisited during the amended budget cycle. It would be an opportunity for the board should the payroll, the 1.5% payroll tax for the MSP premiums be reversed for school districts, as we've read in the media. If those funds become available, you can start to replenish back the capital reserve.
Further questions on, yes, trustee Dormer.
And there's no way the provincial government will fund a portable.
Mr. Sunquist?
There's no way. It's a local responsibility.
Any further questions on the motion? All those in favor? Motion carries unanimously. Are there any further items around Chemainus Elementary for next year, trustee Crowe?
I just wanted to say thank you to all the parents who came out and were so candid and passionate in advocating for the kids and for the community. That it was a super helpful session, very enlightening, and I just really appreciate their participation on a hot night in summer. Let's stand up.
Thank you, and that's really comments on behalf of the board. Trustee Schmidt.
I just want to say that I appreciated coming here today and finding the briefing note and the options to give us some possible ideas on where we can go from here. So I just want to say thank you for arriving to finding that briefing note on Edgewater.
Yes, thank you, staff. And trustee Thorne, did you ever hear that?
I just want to say thank you to the parents and the students that came out last night and the board for coming together and talking about these things. I know everybody worries about money, and that's a big thing, but I think what we're doing is right because we're staying with students first. And I know it's going to be a struggle, and I know there's concern, and there should be. But those are challenges that we take every day. I'm just happy that we made some move today to protect and save those kids so that they've got what they need. Leadership opportunities, being around their friends. Parents are relieved that the kids aren't going to be losing their identity, going to other schools. And I say that simply because going from residential school into a regular school for me was traumatic, very traumatic. And I never really got over that, but I learned to challenge myself. And that's why last night I didn't get a lot of sleep, because it bothered me. It bothered the heck out of me. And hearing the parents talk to me last night, I was ever so grateful. And I want to commend all of you at this table. It's a pleasure working with you. Maybe we'll be back next year, maybe we won't. But nonetheless, we've got a lot of work ahead of us because we're growing. We're growing everywhere. So be it us or the next board, we've got a lot of work to do.
And I think that concludes our session today. We do have a lot of work coming up, and we have a lot of planning. To put the 2 portables there, yes, it is helpful for the kids and for the community, and we're all happy about that, but it's not going to sustain us very long, and we need to have a long-term plan. So, and we need to continue to look at our budget, because we are tapping into it, and we need to be cognizant that we are district-wide. So thank you all for your efforts. Particular thank you to our staff and to the community. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. Trustee Schmidt and Trustee DeGroot.
No,
All
stay.
those in favor? Motion carries. Thank you. Well done. All of you.